What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Bonus Discord mailbag episode. Going to answer all the questions you guys just dumped in our Discord. As a reminder, if you're watching this, listening to it somewhere beside Patreon War Room, subscribe and upgrade to War Room so you can have all your questions answered on the Discord. And you can be in our crazy game day Discord chat and all the other great stuff that happens there and all the other bonus content that happens there. I am fresh off recording our Sunday AM coffee, and I said, why the hell not? Let's record another episode because it's the season for content. I'm sitting here wearing the Badlands quarter zip. We'll be back in stock soon, along with the rest of our crew necks and T-shirts, which are for stock now. So go to badlandstoj.com and check them out. Let's just dive right in. Straight mailbag episode, and then we're back into our normal schedule rotation. Should have a Buck the Trend later today. If I release this at night, then it's tomorrow. And then me and Will react to the game on Saturday. Q&A. Here we go. I answered the question about the Reddick percentages that was thrown to a poll in the general. Question from Boy Green 25. Does your new show that's debuting next week rhyme with an old show called the Can't Wait Podcast? No comment is what I will say, but we will have more specifics out next week, and we're excited about it. Badlands is expanding and becoming a little bit more of a media company, which is exciting. I could say the title doesn't rhyme, but I'm not going to talk about it anymore. You get the point. Michael, G3. What is the money line for Jordan Travis taking a meaningful snap this season? Are you taking that bet? I see no world Jordan Travis takes a meaningful snap this season. So, like, horrific long odds, and I would not bet on them. I think he will be put on the season-long IR sooner rather than later, especially now that it looks like Peasley might be able to be a competent third-string quarterback and preseason arm for them. There's just no reason to risk it. So I think you'll see mostly Rodgers, maybe a little Tyrod, and if a real emergency strikes, maybe it's Peasley. Don't think it's going to be Jordan Travis this year. Tyler Ferraro, no BS. Is this roster with Reddick capable of winning a Super Bowl? Winning a Super Bowl. I will say, yes, it's capable of winning a Super Bowl. The Jets have enough talent on paper with Reddick to be in the second round of the playoffs in a coin flip type game in the second half. And if you can get that far, all you kind of need is a couple other things to break right. You know, the ball bounces the right way, you steal that game, and then you get the right matchup in the AFC Championship game. Shit happens. This almost happened in 2009. Like, the Jets were not on paper good enough to be anywhere near a Super Bowl because Sanchez, I love Sanchez more than anyone. He had 12 interceptions and 20 touchdowns that year. And after starting 3-0, they were pretty damn bad all season. And they only got in the playoffs because the Colts rested their starters and the Bengals didn't take the last game seriously because they were playing the Jets. You get in the tournament, you get a nice matchup against the Bengals. You catch a sleeping Chargers team who chokes, and you're up 17-6 against the Colts, who are way better than you. And if Drew Coleman times his jump right, they could have won that game. They would have had no business being in a Super Bowl. So, yes, it's capable of winning a Super Bowl. Would I bet my life on them winning a Super Bowl? No. I haven't seen them make the playoffs in 13 years. But talent-wise, it's capable. I've seen worse Jet teams get very close to making a Super Bowl. Fouge. I'm noticing a trend of DJ Reed getting beat in practices this camp. Keeping in mind it's usually against Garrett. Any cause for concern that this might be the year he starts regressing a little, or am I being too pessimistic? I think it's a reasonable take. I don't think it has anything to do with training camp. I think DJ Reed took probably a half step back last year from 2022, where he was excellent. He was still good last year. He just wasn't quite as good as he was in 2022. He probably won't be quite as good this year as he was last year. He's an older corner, a smaller corner. They generally don't age great, which is why I don't think he's getting a new contract from the team, which is why I think it's important to keep an eye on guys like Eccles and Stiggers and JBC has young options to play a little bit if needed this year and then to be potential starters in 2025, because I don't think Reed will be here. I think he'll be fine this year. I think he'll be a good starter. I don't think he's going to be great, but I think he'll be a good starter. And that will probably be enough. But someone will get beat at some point, and it's not likely to be Sauce Gardner, and it's actually probably not likely to be Michael Carter, who's really damn good too, and right into the prime of his career. So pay him. But people will get beat. If Tyreek Hill's going to run by someone on the Jets, it's probably going to be DJ Reed, and that happens. That's football. Teams score a lot of points. So I don't think he's going to be a disaster, but I don't think he's going to be an all-pro or Pro Bowler. Next question From Yanks, MTN, quarterback aside, where do you rank this roster across the league? I mean, if you're factoring in Rodgers and the quarterback, like it's a top, I think it's a top, worst case, it's a top 8 roster. Best case, it's a top 4-ish roster. A lot of it's going to depend on Rodgers, but just on paper, I don't see how you put them like out of the top 8. I'm always going to include the Chiefs up there just because Mahomes and Reed cancel everything else out. And I know they have other issues on their roster. It doesn't matter. You got Mahomes, Kelsey, Reed. When the chips are down, they're going to deliver, and they've earned the benefit of that doubt. The Ravens, you just have to put them up there because of the consistency of winning. The Niners, same deal, who the Jets are going to see in week 1. After that, you start getting into, well, is it Buffalo until we see for sure that Buffalo's, really worse than them? The Browns, if, they're a similar spot to the Jets where that roster's loaded on paper, but there's questions about the quarterback, although I'll take our questions over their questions. You look around the rest of the conference. Some people might say the Texans. I think that's a coin flip, and I like how the Jets match up against the Texans as we saw last year. Eagles can make a fair argument. The Eagles have a better roster on paper. There's just not a lot of teams out there who are definitively in that discussion for, being better than the Jets. The Lions, some people would probably say have a better, the roster than the Jets. They're few and far between is what I would say overall. Next question, Yash8361. Who finishes with more this year, Brees rushing or Garrett receiving? It's going to be close. I think Brees will have about 2,000 total yards, but I'm going to say he has 1,450 rushing and 550 receiving. Whereas Garrett, I think, narrowly beats Brandon Marshall's record and has like 1,515 yards. So Garrett beats him, but Brees obviously has more overall yards, better fantasy football player, and is still narrowly the main focal point of the offense. But both these guys are awesome, and I cannot wait to watch them play. And I know I sound like a little kid when I say that, but I'm very excited to watch them play this year. T-Patch, aside from wide receiver, which position could you see being a trade target in the coming months? Safety, definitely. And they didn't pull the button. They didn't hit the button on Simmons or Marcus May or any of the other veterans we thought they might. So if they're struggling there, could they make a veteran move for a safety at some point? Defensive line, edge, if they don't settle shit with Reddick, not off the table at all. Those are the main ones I'd watch. I think they have enough depth at offensive line where, a tackle gets hurt, you got Olu, an interior guy gets hurt. Can you make it work with Wes or Newman for a week or two? Maybe. I'm watching the defensive front. I'm watching receiver, and I'm watching safety still. Next question from Christian Lynch. If Mosley or Quincy is hurt and the Jets are up at the end of the game in an obvious passing situation, do you think Clark ends up playing some linebacker with Ashton at safety, or does Sherwood just play the second linebacker? It depends on the team and how spread they are and what their tight end is. It sounds like Sherwood's had an awesome camp. I'll believe it when I see it in a game setting. We haven't seen Clark yet. I want to see him too. My guess is in that kind of scenario, they probably would drop Clark down and get Ashton on the field. I think they like him in sort of passing obvious situations. He's shown a nose for the football. Unless Sherwood's really been as good as everyone's making him out to be at camp, then maybe he's just like Quincy running around out there. And no one's just like Quincy. But I think you're mapping it out is a pretty practical thing you could see where Clark has that versatility to jump down. And then, do you get Ashton out in the field where he can help force some turnovers on the back end? Next question from Ficanosterism. Considering at this point it's hard to believe our constant issues with extensions aren't largely rooted in ownership, do you think they're having liquidity issues, they're philosophically opposed to forward-thinking extensions, or something else? The whole thing is so mind-boggling to me, considering the random idiots like myself can see how enormously beneficial it is to approach extensions like the Eagles and Browns. I think there's multiple factors at play. Liquidity, I think, is involved in it. I think you have an owner who may be keeping his powder dry a little bit until he sees what happens in the election, because that could influence what job he's doing after said election. I doubt there's a philosophical opposition to extensions. I think Douglas is probably a touch too stubborn at time on setting his number and not moving off it and not realizing the qualitative value of keeping young talent. And ultimately, quantitatively, this does save you money often in the long term. So I think you mix all of that together with a little too much influence from the business side of the house. It's how you keep ending up, in this situation. So it's silly. Liquidity shouldn't ever be an issue for an NFL team. These are the richest people in the world. I would just like to think, like, can we be smart and get Reddick done? And in 2 months, can we get Michael Carter done? Because then we got some real hard work to do with Sauce and Garrett and Brees and Jermaine, particularly Sauce and Garrett, who need to be here as the faces of the franchise for the next decade, or you have like a Mookie Betts situation or something like that, where he just can't let guys like that go anywhere. And this is a franchise that lost Darrelle Revis to the Patriots ultimately, which seems incomprehensible, but happened. So anything is possible. NY Jets 1250. Do you believe the Jets coaching staff is talking up Clemens so much because they actually think he's good and want him to have a major role, or because they've already have Watts, Taylor, Tack penciled into the final 53 over him and want to see if he'd get anything in return as opposed to cutting him? I don't think the Jets are playing checkers like that. Like, other teams have tape. They've seen Clemens. They've seen his shortcomings. They know he was a 4th-round pick. It's not like he was a 2nd-round pick or a 1st-round pick. They know what they are trading for. I think the Jets coaching staff is probably scared internally. They're going to have to live without Reddick, and they're trying to hype Clemens up a little bit and show that they're confident in him, even if that confidence is misplaced. I think they'll leak those clips as much as they can to maybe put pressure on Reddick's side, which I don't think they're going to take the bait on because they know who Michael Clemens is too. If the Jets didn't need Reddick, they wouldn't have traded for him in the first place. So Reddick's side knows they need him no matter what they say about Michael Clemens. I think opposing staffs know who Clemens is. He has 2 years of tape out there. So I don't think they're playing 4-dimensional chess. I think they're trying to hype up their own guy in case he has to play a bigger role than they want. And it doesn't hurt maybe if some of the whispers get back to Reddick's side of the camp while Rodgers is calling and sweet-talking him. So good spread of questions. Thank you, everyone. Buck the Trend up on the feed next, and then preseason game reaction. BadlandsTOJ.com. Check it out for merch. And if you're watching this on YouTube, Patreon.com/BadlandsTOJ. We are 20 away from 3,000. And if you don't sign up before November 4th, you're going to have to pay that extra iOS fee, which you don't want to do. So everyone signed up before November doesn't have to deal with it. So sign up now. Thank everyone for listening. We will talk to you soon.